"I love him," she declared into the microphone, and the crowd erupted in applause. He leaned closer to her ear. "I wonder how long you can survive this game." Her heart pounded with a truth she herself did not know. And the guests saw only a perfect picture, a supermodel and the man the city called the monster with millions. And suddenly, from the back rows, someone shouted, "She still doesn't know, right?" And the hall fell into a suffocating silence. Her smile froze. She didn't even understand what she was supposed to know. He didn't raise an eyebrow, just took a slow sip of wine. The cameras kept flashing, but the air was no longer festive. Every word could trigger an explosion. She tried to hold the mask of happiness, but she felt it. Among hundreds of faces were eyes staring at her with cruel, knowing grins. She gripped his arm tighter than before, whispering through clenched teeth, "What was that? What are they talking about?" He turned toward her slowly, his face calm, almost tender, and replied loud enough for the table nearby to hear, "Enjoy the moment. Truth is expensive, and tonight is already paid for." Her pulse spiked. The applause returned in waves, but behind the noise she caught muffled whispers, words she couldn't make out, though her name was in them, repeated like a secret. She forced another smile for the photographers, but her hand trembled so hard she nearly dropped the microphone. Across the room, a man she didn't recognize stood up, raised his glass, and locked eyes with her husband. No toast, no words, just a stare that lasted too long, sharp enough to cut the air. Her husband smiled back, the kind of smile that carried no warmth. The crowd shifted uneasily. She swallowed hard, leaned closer to him again. "Tell me what's going on." He placed the glass down, his ring tapping against the crystal with a sharp click that silenced even the whispers, and answered, still looking straight ahead, "This is only the beginning." Her chest tightened. She felt trapped inside a play where everyone but her knew the script. And yet, in that moment of fear, something else flared inside her, a stubbornness, a refusal to be the fool. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and forced her voice steady, "Then let's see who lasts longer." The hall erupted once again, half cheering, half whispering, as if no one could tell whether they were watching a wedding, or the start of a war. The crowd was still buzzing when she set the microphone down with a sharp thud. Her chest burned, her palms slick, but her voice came steady, enough smiling. She tugged his arm, pulling him toward the edge of the stage. It wasn't a request. For the first time that night, she acted, not posed. He followed, slow and deliberate, the smile never leaving his face. "You want answers here?" In front of them, he asked, gesturing toward the hundreds of eyes tracking their every move. His tone was calm, but laced with challenge, almost daring her. "I want the truth," she hissed. "Now." Before he could respond, the MC hurried forward, laughing nervously into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause for our beautiful couple." The band struck up a tune, drowning the tension in forced cheer. Guests clapped again, but unease lingered. Every cheer sounded too loud, every laugh too brittle. She didn't wait for the show to continue. She turned, faced the crowd, and raised her voice, "Stop." Music faltered, hands froze mid-clap. For one dizzying moment, she held the entire hall in silence. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Her heart hammered, but her decision was clear. She would not be the ornament in someone else's play. That's when the lights above flickered. A brief stutter, nothing more, but enough to ripple gasps across the room. In the half-second of dimness, she caught sight of something she wasn't supposed to, a folded envelope on the main table, placed right before her husband's chair. It hadn't been there before. She moved without thinking, stepping down and reaching for it. Fingers brushed the paper, but his hand closed over hers, firm, unyielding. "Not yet," he murmured, too soft for the guests but sharp enough to pierce her resolve. Her eyes locked on his. "Then I'll take it," she answered, louder, drawing stares again. It was the first line she spoke not as a bride, not as a mask, but as a woman who had chosen to fight. The room broke into restless noise, questions, whispers, the sound of chairs scraping. And though no one knew what was in that envelope, everyone understood, the wedding had become something else entirely. Her husband's grip tightened around the envelope, his knuckles pale, but she refused to let go. Gasps rose from the guests, whispers sharpened into rumors before her eyes. "You think they're here for you," he said under his breath, voice low, dangerous. "They're here for the spectacle. Don't disappoint them." She yanked her hand free, straightened, and faced the crowd. "This is my life, not a performance," she declared. Applause didn't come. Instead, there was a restless murmur, like a storm building behind the walls. That's when she noticed him, a man at the far end of the hall, not clapping, not whispering, just watching. He wasn't dressed like the other guests, no tuxedo, no champagne glass. A plain dark suit, a folder under his arm, and eyes fixed entirely on her. When their gazes met, he nodded, once, deliberate. Her breath caught. Who was he? A journalist? A lawyer? An enemy? She didn't know, but in that instant she sensed, whatever answers she was chasing, he held part of them. She stepped forward, but her husband moved first, blocking her path. "Not him," he said flatly. His voice cut through the noise, leaving her more certain he feared that stranger more than the envelope in front of them. "I'll decide that," she shot back, slipping past him with sudden speed. Chairs scraped as guests shifted, craning to see. She pushed through the crowd, heart racing, determination burning. For the first time, she wasn't just reacting, she was fighting. But as she neared the man, security intercepted. "Sorry, miss, private area," one guard muttered, arms outstretched. She turned sharply, her voice rising, "He's here for me." The hall hushed again, and the man with the folder raised it slightly, as if to confirm her words. Her husband's voice boomed behind her, "If you open that folder, this night ends differently than you ever imagined." Every eye was on her now. Envelope on the table. Folder in the stranger's hand. A choice hanging heavy in the air. She reached forward, fingertips brushing the folder, and the lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed the hall, and a wave of nervous laughter rolled through the crowd. Someone muttered about the power, others fumbled for their phones. She froze, her hand still hovering where the folder had been. The air felt heavier, charged, as if every secret in the room had suddenly pressed closer. A beam of light sliced through the black. The man in the dark suit had switched on his phone flashlight. He held it low, his face half-shadowed, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "You deserve to know." But not here. Before she could reply, the lights flickered back. The band stumbled into tune, the MC barked something about technical issues, and the guests nervously chuckled, eager to believe it was all an accident. Yet her husband's glare told a different story. Nothing tonight was accidental. She straightened her back, lifted her chin. "Give me the folder," she demanded, her voice sharp enough to slice through the chatter. For a heartbeat, the man hesitated. Then, quickly, he slid a single sheet free and pressed it into her palm before security could react. Her first victory, small, fragile, but hers. She hid the paper in her bouquet, forcing her face into a smile as cameras flashed again. Her husband leaned close, his whisper colder than ever, "Whatever he gave you, burn it. Or it burns you." Her pulse thundered, but she didn't look away. Instead, she whispered back, steady, "For once, I'll decide what burns." The music swelled, the toasts resumed, and to everyone else, the show continued. But inside her bouquet, the folded page pulsed like a live flame. She longed to read it, to tear away the veil, but she knew, not yet, not with all eyes on her. Still, she risked one quick glance, just one. Enough to see her own name typed across the top, bold and final, above words that made her throat tighten. Contract of agreement. Her breath caught. Her bouquet slipped, flowers scattering across the floor. She bent quickly, clutching the paper tight, but in that brief stumble she caught sight of something else, another envelope, tucked beneath the stage, marked with the same initials as her husband's. One page wasn't the whole truth. And now she had to ask herself, how many more were hidden? She clutched the contract tighter, her knuckles white, as the bouquet lay scattered at her feet. Guests leaned in, whispering, hungry for drama. She forced a laugh, pretending it was nothing, but inside she felt the walls closing in. Every camera flash felt like a blade cutting deeper into her disguise. Her husband bent down, picked up one of the fallen roses, and pressed it into her hand. To the crowd, it looked romantic. To her, it was a warning. His eyes locked on hers. Put it down. Stop now. But she didn't. She slipped the paper into her dress, close to her skin, where no hand but hers could reach. That was her choice, dangerous, maybe reckless, but hers. And for the first time, she felt the power shift, even if only slightly. Then the MC, desperate to regain control, invited them to the center for the first dance. The music swelled, couples cheered, and suddenly all eyes were on them again. He took her hand firmly, pulling her close. His smile never faltered, but his whisper cut like ice, read that, and you destroy yourself. She moved with him, steps graceful but heart-pounding. Then let's see, she replied, her voice low, trembling but resolute. The waltz carried them across the floor, yet every spin, every dip, felt like a cage tightening. She wanted to scream, but she knew, survival meant control, not chaos. And just as the song reached its peak, her heels snapped. She stumbled hard, nearly falling. Gasps swept the room. He caught her, steadying her, making it look like a tender rescue. Applause thundered, but her cheeks burned with humiliation. Inside, she was shaking, not from the fall, but from the realization, someone wanted her broken. As the clapping faded, she caught sight of the man in the dark suit again. This time he wasn't just watching. He was gone. His chair empty, the folder no longer in his hands. Her heart sank. Whatever answers he carried, they were leaving with him. And in that crushing moment of defeat, she knew, if she didn't act now, she'd lose everything. She tore her hand from her husband's grip and bolted for the exit. Gasps echoed, cameras flashed, the hall erupted, but she didn't stop. When she shoved the doors open, the cold night air hit her face. And there, at the edge of the street, she saw him, the man with the folder, stepping into a black car. The door was closing. She had one choice, run to him and risk it all, or stay behind and let the truth vanish forever. She sprinted across the gravel driveway, heels slipping, lungs burning. "Wait," she shouted, but the black car was already pulling away. Her heart pounded as she kicked off her broken shoes and ran barefoot, the pavement slicing into her feet. Every instinct screamed to stop, but she pushed harder, unwilling to let the truth vanish into the night. The car slowed at the gates. She caught up, slammed her palm against the rear window. The glass rolled down halfway, and there he was, the man in the dark suit, folder on his lap. His expression calm, almost unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Then tell me why I am here," she snapped, voice ragged, chest heaving. "What is this? What did you put in my hands?" He studied her for a moment, as if weighing whether she was ready. "That paper is only the surface," he replied. "The rest," his words trailed as he glanced past her shoulder. She turned. Her husband stood at the top of the steps, flanked by two men she hadn't noticed before. Not guests, not family. They were dressed like staff, but their posture screamed otherwise. Watching. Waiting. Fear knifed through her. She spun back to the man in the car. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking for the first time. "I can't keep pretending. Just tell me. He leaned closer, lowered his voice to a whisper only she could hear. The contract isn't about love. It's about ownership. Her breath caught, but before she could press further, the driver accelerated. The car slipped through the gates and vanished into the dark. She stood there, trembling, the echo of his words tearing into her chest. Her husband's voice boomed across the courtyard, "Get inside. Now." Every muscle ached, her legs shook, her throat burned from the chase. She could have collapsed, given in, pretended she hadn't seen or heard anything. But instead, she took one step backward, away from him, clutching her dress where the hidden paper pressed against her skin. Her body was failing, but her will sharpened. "No," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Not anymore." And for the first time, the crowd behind the doors wasn't clapping. They were watching. Silent. Waiting to see if she would break, or fight. She stood frozen in the courtyard, bare feet torn, the contract page pressed against her chest like a secret she could barely carry. Her husband's voice thundered again, inside. "Now." She glanced at the grand hall behind him, the crowd pressing at the windows, hungry for scandal. There was no way back, only forward. Two men descended the steps toward her. She wanted to run, but her body screamed with exhaustion. They reached her before she could move, gripping her arms firmly, dragging her back toward the lights. She twisted, fought, but her strength was fading. Cameras flared again as the doors opened, capturing her struggle. To the crowd, it looked like a drunken scene, a bride losing control. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers to judgment. Her husband raised his hands, silencing the room. "Forgive her," he said smoothly, "it's been overwhelming." His words dripped with false tenderness, and the audience clung to it, nodding, eager to believe his version. The humiliation pierced her deeper than the pain in her feet. This was her fall, her perfect image shattered in front of everyone. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. She wouldn't give him that victory. She looked down, and saw the rose he had forced into her hand earlier. A single petal had peeled back, revealing something folded inside. Her heart leapt. Clutching it tight, she hid it in her fist. It wasn't much, but it was something, a spark in the ashes. The music started again, desperate to restore order. She forced herself to breathe, to stand tall, though inside she felt broken. Every step back into the hall felt like walking into a cage. She knew the crowd pitted her, mocked her, but she also knew she had one thing they didn't, a truth worth fighting for. Just as she steadied herself, a waiter stumbled nearby, spilling wine across her dress. She recoiled, but then froze. The stain spread into a distinct shape, a mark she recognized from the header of the contract page. It wasn't an accident. She looked up sharply, but the waiter was already gone, vanishing into the blur of faces. Her pulse spiked again. Someone else was in on this. Someone close. And as she turned, clutching both the hidden page and the folded petal, she saw her husband watching, not with anger, but with a cold satisfaction, as if everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Her dress was soaked in red, the mark still burning into her vision. She stumbled into a side corridor, clutching the crumpled petal in one hand, the hidden page in the other. Away from the music, away from the stairs, her breaths came ragged, shallow. She unfolded the petal. Inside was a slip of paper, handwritten, urgent, "Don't trust the signatures." Her heart slammed. She pressed the note against the contract page, scanning the lines. Her name was there, bold and clear, but now, under the ballroom lights, she saw it differently. The strokes weren't hers. The signature was forged. A chill raced through her spine. "What did they sign me into?" she whispered. Every line on that page suddenly felt like a trap she had walked into blind. And worse, her husband had known all along. Footsteps echoed behind her. She snapped the paper shut, shoving it back into her dress. He appeared at the end of the hall, calm, almost casual, as if he had expected her to run. "You've had enough games tonight," he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "This isn't a marriage," she shot back, her voice trembling but sharp. "It's a contract. And I never agreed." His smile widened, chilling. "That's the beauty of it. You don't have to." Her knees weakened. Every instinct told her to collapse, to surrender, but she gritted her teeth, forcing her voice steady. "Then I'll make my own choice." And she bolted past him, deeper into the corridor, her bare feet slapping the marble. She burst through a door into a service hallway, dim and quiet. At the far end, a figure waited, the same waiter who had spilled wine on her dress. He raised a finger to his lips, signaling silence, then lifted another envelope from his tray. Her pulse raced. She reached for it, desperate, knowing this could be the key. But before the paper touched her fingers, a gunshot cracked through the hall. The envelope slipped from the waiter's hand, fluttering toward the ground. She froze, the echo of the shot ringing in her ears. And in that frozen second, she realized, the truth wasn't just dangerous. Someone was willing to kill to keep it hidden. The gunshot split the air. She dropped to the ground instinctively, hands over her head, heart thundering like a drum. The waiter's envelope slid across the marble floor, stopping inches from her reach. She crawled forward, fingers brushing the paper, only to have a polished shoe slam down on it. Her husband. He loomed above her, calm in the chaos, and slowly bent to pick up the envelope. "Always reaching for things that aren't yours," he murmured, slipping it into his pocket. "That's the problem with you." She scrambled to her feet, chest heaving. "What are you hiding from me?" "Not hiding," he corrected smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks as though they weren't standing in the aftermath of a gunshot. "Protecting. And if you had any sense, you'd thank me for it." Behind him, security swarmed, guests screamed, some rushing for exits. But she saw none of it. Her eyes were locked on the man she'd married, the man who had turned her into a spectacle, a pawn. Her voice cracked, raw with fury. "You never wanted a wife. You wanted property." His smile faltered. For the first time, she saw something sharp in his gaze, fear. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Then explain it," she demanded. He hesitated, then leaned in, whispering so only she could hear, "Your signature isn't the only one on that contract." The word struck harder than the gunshot. Her stomach knotted. "What do you mean?" He pulled back, lips curling in that cold, deliberate smile. "Ask yourself who benefits when you lose everything." Her head spun, fragments of doubt colliding. Friends. Agents. Sponsors. People she trusted. Could one of them have signed with him? Before she could press, the waiter staggered up from the floor, clutching his side. Blood seeped between his fingers, but his eyes burned with urgency. He shoved a small flash drive into her palm, whispering hoarsely, "Not paper, files, everything you need, don't let him." His voice broke as guards dragged him away. She stared at the drive, trembling, the crowd scattering, her husband advancing. Around her, the world collapsed into noise and shadows. She had one fragile piece of truth in her hand. But with her enemies closing in, she knew, if she couldn't protect it, everything, her name, her freedom, her future, would be destroyed. The hall shook with chaos. And she realized the real explosion hadn't happened yet. It was coming. She clutched the flash drive in her fist as the ballroom spun in chaos. Her husband advanced, security closing in, guests fleeing like frightened birds. Her body trembled, her strength nearly gone, but inside something unyielding flared to life. She had one choice, to let them bury her, or to fight with the last piece of truth in her hand. He reached for her, voice cutting through the noise. "Give it to me. You don't even know what you're holding." Her lips curved into a faint smile, defiance shining through exhaustion. Then maybe it's time the world knows. She shoved past him, barefoot and blood-stained, onto the stage where it had all begun. Cameras were still rolling, reporters screaming, lenses capturing every second. She raised the flash drive high, her voice breaking but fierce. This isn't a wedding. This is a contract built on lies. Gasps thundered across the room. Guards surged forward, but she stepped back, her words sharper than any weapon. My name was forged. My life was sold. And tonight, it ends. Her husband lunged for her arm, but at that moment the giant screens meant for the wedding slideshow flickered. The waiter's final act, the drive, had triggered the files. Documents, emails, signatures filled the screens in bold letters, proof of fraud, of betrayal, of the deal struck behind her back. And among the signatures, side by side, was his, and her agent's. The crowd erupted, a storm of outrage and disbelief. Reporters shouted questions, guests shouted accusations. She staggered but stood tall, the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. For the first time, the lies weren't hers to carry. Her husband's mask cracked. He shouted orders no one obeyed. Security backed away, unwilling to protect him now that the truth was public. His power drained with every flash of a camera, every gasp of betrayal. She turned to him, voice steady, eyes unflinching. You thought you owned me. But you only freed me. He froze, fury and fear twisting his face. But the crowd was no longer his audience. They were hers. She raised her chin, shoulders squared, bloodied but unbroken. Applause swelled, not for a performance, but for survival, for defiance, for victory. And in that roar, she felt it, freedom. The lies, the humiliation, the fear, it had all burned away. What remained was strength. As the doors burst open with flashing lights and officials poured in, she stepped down from the stage, no longer a bride, no longer a pawn. She was herself, stronger, sharper, untouchable. And as she walked past him, she whispered the last words he would hear from her lips, game over.